The twin baronies of Rin and Carthage lie on the outskirts of Terrinoth, far from the free cities. Baron Gregory often hosts his friend and ally, Baron Zachareth, at his seat in the capital city of Erwin. And over the years, the two baronies have aided one another in times of both war and peace. But now, both baronies are in peril. Monsters stalk their forests and mountains, moving with more purpose and coordination than ever before. A new overlord is rising, a wicked and dangerous foe, hidden in the shadows, manipulating events according to his master plan. If the overlord isn't stopped, Rin and Carthage alike will fall into darkness, and the rest of Terrinoth will soon follow. Fortunately, a small group of heroes sent by the White Council are on the road to Erwin to try and help the besieged land. The Berserker, Grisbin the Thirsty. At first glance, Grisbin's story is an old and familiar one. A dwarf from Dunwar, Grisbin has left the mountains to travel through Terrinoth, making his way as a mercenary. His skill with an axe is undeniable, and his love of a good, strong beer memorable. An often repeated joke, oft repeated by Grisbin at least, is that no one is certain if his name should be Grisbin the Bloodthirsty or Grisbin the Beer-Thirsty. Consensus seems to have settled on simply the Thirsty. Grisbin drinks with a will and fights with a terrible rage, both seeming to hint at a darker reason for leaving his home than he has yet been willing to share. The Thief, Jane Fairwood. Although Terrinoth has enjoyed comparative peace and prosperity since the Dragon Wars, there are still a dozen small conflicts or wars every year against foes both within and without her borders. Jane Fairwood was a soldier serving under Sir Garrick Whitmore when one of those small wars claimed the lives of Sir Garrick and every man under his command, except Jane. Trapped deep within the Crimson Forest and hunted by the Uthik, it took Jane nearly 6 months to escape and return to civilization. Upon her return, Jane was branded a deserter, and so she turned about and vanished into the forest again. She dwells there still, emerging from the wild lands, only to discharge the duty she still feels to the common folk of Terrinoth and to her former mentor, Sir Garrick. The Rune Master, Leoric of the Book. After one too many heated arguments with the provost, Professor Leoric of the University of Greyhaven was invited to go on an extended sabbatical. As an adventurer, Leoric's constant references to his scholarly text quickly earned him the sobriquet of the Book. Leoric's sabbatical continues as the former professor applies his magical knowledge in the field and seeks out long-forgotten knowledge and wisdom in his servants to the White Council. The Disciple, Avric Albright. Avric Albright spent 3 years as a soldier assigned to the citadel of Archik before hearing his calling. He traveled to Vivendale to join the priesthood but never arrived. On the way, one innocent's cry for help led to another quest to rescue a small town, to another adventure deep beneath the earth. And so it goes for Avric, a man so devoted to the principles of his religion, he cannot find the time to be inducted into its holy order. Still, none doubt his faith nor blessings, and the White Council has approved him as one of their best inside the order. And so, First Blood begins. As the heroes were traveling toward Erwin, they came across the still smoldering remains of a traveling caravan. One of the caravan guards, wearing the livery of Baron Gregory, lies wounded nearby. An ambush, she gasped. That Eaton is sending his minions straight into Aram through the secret path. How could he have known? Ahead, they saw the lumbering two-headed form of an Eaton. He said his name was Mauler. You must stop him. Mauler's goblin minions are taking a secret route to attack Aram, Baron Gregory's seat. If too many of his goblins escape off the far side of the trail, Mauler will have triumphed over them. Their goal is to kill Mauler before that is allowed to happen. And so it was that Jane began her quest to move towards the monsters. But before she could even move but one step, a wire was on the ground. A tripwire, a trap. She never saw it coming. Could she avoid it? Could she just keep on going and attack the monsters, or would it affect her? And so it was that Jane passed the tripwire set by a mysterious enemy and still ran over towards the monsters. And so Jane ran up to the two-headed Eaton. Mauler was his name. A vicious, ugly, ferocious beast, stinking of death, looking of rot. She attacked with her throwing knives. She pulled them out. Spending all her fatigue, avoiding the tripwire, running up to the monster, she threw the knives. And she threw them hard. But the powerful Eaton swung his gigantic mace and blocked the knives and laughed, all while doing so. Everett Albright, spending his fatigue, running straight up to have Jane's side and back defend her, also attacked the vicious Mauler with his shiny silver mace. A powerful weapon it was. He decided to attack as well and came down as hard as he could. But being the crowded situation, being that Mauler was more nimble than he could ever have thought a giant Eaton would be, the giant Eaton moved out of the way and Albert missed the mighty blow with his mace. Leoric, seeing that his fellow heroes were engaging the two Eatons, decided he would do something about the goblins. And so he got in their way, spending some fatigue in order to try to block the path, knowing that the dwarf would come up behind him. Sticking out his runes, he cast 2 spells at 2 of the goblins to try to hit them with his arcane bolt. And so he aimed and attacked at one goblin, and he hit. And the goblin fell over and died. And so he attacked the other goblin next to him, and he hit as well. And this goblin died, and so 2 of the 5 goblins lay smoldering on the floor, pierced by the arcane bolt. And Grisbin the Thirsty did all that he could. He ran up past Leoric and started charging the goblins. Every bit of his energy and fatigue was spent to get to where he had to go, but he was there. But he was too tired to attack at that moment. And so the monsters would have their chance. And so the giant Eaton, Mauler, was the first to attack. And he would attack Fair Jane. And Jane was in harm's way. And so the mighty Eaton attacked. And it hit her. And it hit her hard. A gigantic blow to her. And so the Eaton hit her so hard, he tried to throw her. And he did. And Jane, poor Jane, was thrown all the way back several spaces, and she suffered even more damage. But Mauler had a trick up his sleeve. He decided to attack again, but this time he attacked Averick. But Averick was prepared, and he was able to avoid the terrible blow. But he was still in the path of the other Eaton, and so the other Eaton attacked Averick. And this time Albert was hit. And so Albert brought his mighty shield up to try to block off as much as the blow as he could. And he was able to block off some of it. Still, it was a mighty blow. And then the goblins, who have a unique ability to run past friend and foe alike, began their movement. And so it was that one of the goblins sped unnaturally quick and ran past the heroes with such swiftness and such length that they never saw it coming. And so it was that the goblins with such grace and skill were able to evade the heroes, run right past them, and were all the way on the other side of the low pond that was there. They did not attack, they just ran towards their goal. And so the heroes had to come up with something, anything, to try and stop the massive Etons and the goblins. They were in dire straits. What could they do? Well, Averick decided he was going to do what he needed to do and attack the Eton and attack Mauler as hard as best he could. So this time he pulled back his mighty iron mace and attacked, and he hit, but the Eton was able to fend it off, and so reared back again, and he attacked again. And this time he did a glancing blow, good enough on the Eton, and also stunning the Eton. And so the Eton was stunned, trying to gather his wits about him. Leoric of the Book decided to shoot his arcane bolts again at the goblins that were retreating. And so he shot at one closest towards him, and he hit. But the goblin was able to somehow fend it off, and Leoric, not dismayed, tried it again. But this time the goblin was able to duck down, and the goblin avoided the magical bolt altogether. Cursing, Leoric was very upset, and the heroes had to keep pushing on. And so it was that Grisbin decided to leave his position where he was and run up to help our fellow Averick Albright against Mauler, while Jane got next to Leoric and decided to throw a throwing knife at the goblin that had so avoided Leoric's magical bolts. And she hit him dead on center. And so it was that the goblin fell and perished to the ground. And so our heroes had taken one more goblin out of the board. But now it was the monster's turn to go. Now Mauler was starting to recover from his stunning, so he was not able to do anything but recover. But his fellow Eton next to him was able to attack Sir Albright. And he hit Sir Albright. And Sir Albright raised his shield, and it was just a glancing blow. But on the other hand, the goblins were able to move, and move quick they were. But yet another goblin had joined the fray and come onto the board. And so the heroes were starting to be surrounded and starting to lose their will. Goblins everywhere. And so two goblins escaped and got off the beaten path, much to the dismay of the heroes. And so Ulrich decided he was going to attack Mauler again to try to whittle the giant Eton down. And he hit him. But the Eton totally defended himself perfectly well against the blow of the mace. And Ulrich attacked again. This time he hit the Eton, and he stunned him again. The dwarf decided he would move up one and attack the Eton. And so he reared back his mighty chipped great axe and decided to attack. And he hit himself a good blow. And so the Eton was hit again by our good Grisbin the Thirsty. And so Miss Fairwood decided to move up and attack the remaining goblin closest to her. And so she had threw one of her throwing knives and attacked the creature, but she missed. Leoric of the Book moved up to Mauler and decided he would shoot a bolt at Mauler. So he shot and he hit. but Mauler was able to defend very good against it. And so the heroes now find themselves even in a worse situation than they were before. And so another goblin escaped the path, while one was almost out completely of the path, and another one had come on the board and ran and was running right past Jane Fairywood. Meanwhile, Mauler could do nothing but recover from being stunned again. But the other Eaton decided he would attack, and he decided he would attack the dwarf. And so with a mighty blow he swung his mace and he hit the dwarf. And the dwarf took a good blow. It did a decent amount of damage to him. But never daunted, the dwarf got back up and was ready to attack again. Alright, and so Grisbin the Thirsty decided, with the ground shaking, he would get up, woozy from his last blow. He was going to try to end this right now and attack Mauler with 2 swipes of his great axe. And so the first attack, he hit, but it was not a good blow. But Mauler was still unable to defend against it, and he did take a glancing blow damage. But the great chipped axe was not done, and so Grisbin the Thirsty rolled and just swung it again, and this time he hit again. But this time the great Eaton was able to defend against it. But Leoric of the Book was going to shoot now, and he was going to shoot some more of his bolts at the Eaton. And he hit, and it was a good hit. And so the Eaton took a little bit more damage. Never daunted, Leoric shot again. But this time the blow had no effect on the powerful Eaton. And so Albright decided he was going to attack as well to try to finish, or at least to stun the mighty Eaton as he had done before. And so he attacked, and it was not a good hit. And so the Eaton was able to block it. But he got one more chance, and he got too eager with a big swing and a miss. But Jane decided she was going to take out the final goblin right close to her before it can advance any further, and she threw her throwing knife and she hit. But the goblin still was unable to defend, and so the goblin was taking off the board. And so with that said, she also decided to rest and recover some of her fatigue. And so Mauler, very upset at being stunned, now decided he was going to attack. So the ground trembled beneath him, and he swung his mighty axe at the dwarf, his mighty mace at the dwarf, and he hit the dwarf. And the dwarf took not so much, just enough to glance a good blow at him. And so the other Eaton attacked, and this time he attacked Albright, and he hit Albright. But Albright raised his shield and blocked the blow completely. But for some reason the shield crumpled and Albright took damage anyways. There was magic at work here. Maybe the Overlord was doing something. And so it was that this goblin right here escaped, and another goblin came on and was heading right towards Jane. And so what would our heroes do? If one more goblin got away, they would have lost. Mauler, still alive though. Hurting, but still alive. It was up to the heroes to try and stop him.